you very much. Thanks for the invitation. I couldn't wait to present in front of an audience. We've been locked, well, not locked down, but at home for a year in which we've realized that technology will be and is being an element of inequality. It is said that this year we have skipped 7 years of the regular development in terms of internet consumption. So what would have taken us 7 years, we've done it in 1 year. This is like the student syndrome. You just study the day before your exam. You know you have to do it, but, well, unless there's a pandemic looming over you and forcing you to use technology, you don't do it. And within this social corporate disaster, if we try to look for a silver lining, well, we've had to speed up. And as citizens, we've had to digitize individually, collectively, and in the workspace. So, faced with this situation, well, before the pandemic, we commissioned a study to KPMG that was finished 3 months ago with a diagnosis. So we wanted them to analyze how the digital divide was in Catalonia, because we were working with social organizations, and they told us that education and housing were not the main elements of inequality anymore. Today, the fact that you cannot go back to the social world or the labor world, we're talking about vulnerable groups here, the fact that you're not digitally equipped means that you cannot be integrated in these different spheres. To date, you had to have a housing, a postal address to get the notifications from the municipality, the school, etc. And today you need an email address. Many people do not know how to set up an account. So far, housing was the most relevant element of inequality. But today, working with the Sant Joan de Déu Foundation, we're running a pilot with them. And the fact that you don't have a digital capacity or competence means that you lag behind. So we analyzed 3 kinds of divides: the access divide, the possibility to access technology; the use divide, which is the kind of use that we give to technology and the internet; and the knowledge divide. The study has been posted. These are only the highlights of the study, to be able to deliver this in 15 minutes, but these are the main conclusions. At a territorial level, Catalonia, thanks to the work done by the secretary who is here, Catalonia is very well connected compared to other European territories. Catalonia ranks high. It's true that we've got some areas like Terres de l'Ebre, basically, in which the access to optical fiber is lower, but everyone has a smartphone. Laptops are a different story. So despite having broad coverage of optical fiber, there are some gaps. Depending on the income, this is the second graph I'm talking about, the lower the income on the left, the less laptops that we have. But the smartphone is not connected to the income level. So the social and demographical situations and social economic situations are key when it comes to accessing the internet. And finally, and very interesting, the last graph, reasons behind not having access to the internet. There are economic reasons, but then some people say they don't need access to the net. And yes, they do. The public sector has to insist on this. You have to be connected, otherwise you lag behind. There's a cost issue. And of course, if we are lucky enough to be in government again, we will work on this with social bonds. Let's see if we can put them in place to help the citizens to have this physical equipment. But we need to raise awareness about how important it is to have access to the net. And then the knowledge gap is key, because you can have access to the internet and connectivity, but you might not be able to use it. You might not know how to use it. As for the use divide or gap, you've got a couple of graphs here, depending on the social and economic data and the gender data. Well, this is no news at all. The lower the education level and the lower the income, the higher the divide, or the bigger the divide. And as for women, well, this is a recurring topic lately, but among women, the lower the education, the broader the divide. So we have to keep working on the gender gap. Recently, it's been published that the pandemic has meant for women that they have lagged more behind. We have the Donut Plan that intends for women and men to be trained. As for used services, depending on the education level, it's important to see that the highest inequality is seen in the email use. Also, we're talking about higher upgrades here. But as for social media, there's no inequality. It's a cultural topic. If you have a smartphone and you use WhatsApp, you can also use it on a tablet. And depending on the income level, well, as you see on screen, the divide is smaller regarding relational issues and broader in terms of technology services. This has all to do with capacity building and training. And as for the knowledge gap, and that's what we are prioritizing, because you might have optical fiber and give away tablets, etc. But of course, you need to know how to use it. There's no novelty here either. There's an age issue. The younger, the more able. As for gender, the lower your education level, the lesser the abilities. Nationality, this is very patchy. We've got people who come to work in Catalonia, we're talking about highly trained and educated people, but then we've got a segment of migrants that have to be prioritized. There are no news, really. I encourage you to check the full study. You will see very interesting conclusions drawn. And that's why the Catalan government decided to work on an action plan on focusing on these 4 pillars: digital governance, secondly, infrastructures, digital capacity building, and communication and support. Digital governance. We need to identify what's going on to make decisions. We cannot make policies without data. So we need a series of players and organizations that understand what the digital divide is and analyze it. So we need to define what we want to set out to do. We've got different projects, but it's about setting up a consortium or whatever we want to call it of players focusing on this. Then infrastructures and accessibility. As I said, access in terms of connectivity, infrastructure, network, and also access to ICT resources. All citizens must have access to them. As for digital capacity building and competitiveness, we focus on people. We want to build capacity in everyone, and also corporations. Of course, the digital transformation has meant that companies now have the right ecosystem to work. So we have to couple both. And then talent. What do we need? What do companies need? What are we training? What capacities are we building? And finally, support and communication. The Catalan citizens cannot believe that internet is not necessary. It's the main lever in the 21st century. If you want to be connected and you want to keep living like that, you need to be connected. So we need to develop campaigns from the public and private sector about this. This has to be done through communication campaigns, and we have to support people in this growth. And finally, last 5 minutes, 4 actions that are being promoted by my department. The Catalan Charter on Digital Rights and Responsibilities. Simona will tell you more about it. They have worked together with Albert. We have the universal access to the net, mandatory digital capacity building and training, the obligation to innovate and disseminate knowledge. So this is the basics. It would be the basics of the digital rights in Catalonia. And here, this is something I repeat every time I deliver a speech. In 15 days, we will publish support a scholarship or a grant for women to become entrepreneurs. So these companies or startups that will be consolidated companies in the future, well, maybe by doing this, we will have more women in high-ranking positions. The Donatic Awards, you know about them, and then different support lines for girls to study ICT-related careers. You know that there are very few women in this sector, and women have lower salaries, etc. Ict, it's the digital competencies certification of the Catalan government. The new decree has been passed. Basically, it's at the same level of the Digicom, which is the European certification. So Catalans will be able to go abroad and work elsewhere in Europe and make sure that their competencies are certified. We certify about 20,000 people every year, so it's an interesting tool. Another initiative is the Ict Point Network. We've got about 325 or 300 points throughout Catalonia. We've got people who train others. We give them material, we help them to be trained. It's an interesting way to reach out to Mora d'Ebre, up to the Val d'Aran, and up to the northern part of Catalonia. And finally, last but not least, since you come from the corporate sector, we've got the digital talent, Barcelona Digital Talent. We work with the Barcelona Digital Capital. We work on talent retention and development. Of course, we have to develop it here, but keep it here. There are many initiatives. And of course, I have to focus here on the digital society, and we have a very interesting relationship with the Ict Network. We try for these trainers to explain and disseminate this knowledge. And during the pandemic, have you heard about Coursera? It's a very important online training platform, and we were offered by them when we were home to provide free training courses through the Catalan government, and we reached an agreement and we offered technology focused in social innovation focused training courses, and many people registered for these courses. So it's a way to have access to capacity building. It's a different way of learning, but for specific sectors, it can be very useful. This is, once again, what I said. And should you have any question, I'm at your entire disposal to respond. And the divide is one of the levers that have to be worked on. Otherwise, we will be lagging behind. So if I don't see you anymore, this is one of my last events. It's been a pleasure to work in my capacity. Digitization and technology are keys for the country. And from other positions, I will keep working on this matter.